ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the webinar that will alert you to all of the things that we are thinking about, talking about, and, hoping to introduce into our ecosystem as a way to help us all reach compliance and make our privacy space as mature as possible. So let's jump in. Let's see, there we go. All right, so as you can see here, we're going to talk about last year's results. Some of you may know where we're at, where you're at. If you don't know where you're at, we can help you find out where you ended last year. Remember, that was due November 15th. Contact surveys, those are going to be coming out. ISO surveys. Do we have any ISOs on the call? If you are, give us a shout out so that Jeremy can peek at you. Requirements for this year's privacy compliance. Yeah, it's May 30th? May 30th. Oh my gosh. Alexa, how many days until November 15th? It's not responding to me right now. I think it's offline. Coming changes, and it's not even as good as ChatGPT. I tell it that all the time. Compliance revamp, exclamation point, question mark, and some resources. Always with the resources. Let's jump into it. All right, here's our team. If you are not familiar with us, we have Katie on the left, me next, Nicole third. We also have Melissa, who if most of you don't see Melissa in a lot of our interactions, it's because she's one of those magicians working behind the scene. She does a lot of stuff internally at USBE with data governance. Jeremy, of course, a lot of you know, has joined our team from an LEA over the course of the last 6 months. And he works a lot with our security folks. And then there's Nicole, who makes it so that we can travel to see all of your beautiful faces. And today, the three of us that are talking to you are me, Nicole, and Jeremy. So I am going to do a thing that I haven't ever done before, but I'm going to launch this poll. And we've got 6 quick questions. We're going to take a temperature of the room, just kind of see where everybody's at. The end of the school year, how you feeling? Question 1, which LEA are you representing today? You can type that in. How do you feel about your current privacy health? That can be, the documents, that can be the DPAs, that can be all of the official stuff, but it could also be a lot of the soft skills that we talk about, like have teachers that come into the office and rant and rave while there are other people around, or, all sorts of other nuances. How do we feel about our day-to-day when it comes to privacy in our LEAs? We've got 2 people out of 35. How do you feel about your LEA's metadata dictionary? We're going to talk about this. I am anxious to see how this correlates to the results that we have seen in our state. Number 4, do you feel like the current compliance check really gets at the heart of privacy practices in your LEA? Is it just good enough to have some documents that we have to show people and, check the boxes and have a metadata dictionary and be done with it? Or do you feel like there's more there? Number 5, if you could pick one privacy area to focus on in the coming year, what would you choose? And then number 6, do you have any questions? And we'll take a look at that. But keep going on that. We're going to jump ahead. So let's take a look back at the last year. We set some pretty high goals for ourselves last year, and I'm pretty happy to say that I think that we did it. I'm pretty sure that we did it. 100% is like, that's more darts than horseshoes, but we're playing horseshoes here because this is really kind of a hard thing to capture across our state, and we have done phenomenally. Look at this. Our annual notification of FERPA rights. This is one of those. This is the annual notice that we have to, one of the 4 documents, policy documents and annual notifications that we use and present to our parents. As you can see, 99.35% of all of our LEAs have that on their available to their folks, whether on their websites or in like a parent handbook or one of those, one of the other. But as you can see here, we have jumped up quite a bit. There's like I think there's like two folks out there. And we wanted to make a note that PTAC, that is the Policy Technical Assistance Center, I believe, is that the P? Only requirement was that a notice of FERPA rights was posted somewhere on the website. Oh, Privacy Technical Assistance Center, that's the P that I was missing. Of course, USBE's requirement to get a passing score is much more stringent, okay? So
Can you actually go back one slide, John? Sorry.
Yeah, for sure.
I just realized that I just realized this was not like immediately clear, even though it was in my brain. The graph on the left represents the state of Utah. The graph on the right represents the national review that PTAC did. So this is just a comparison of how well schools in the state of Utah did with getting an annual notification of FERPA rights out compared to how schools did nationally. So you can see that, not that it's a competition, because it's not, but if it were, we would be rocking it.
And I hear nationally, and I know a lot of you hear me say this all of the time, we are leaps and bounds ahead of other states. They look to us and to you for those best practices. Directory information notice. Again, 99.35%. Like, that's almost better than Dove's Ivory the soap, right? 99.9 something percent. Like, that's pretty high. And if you would like, we did some deep dive into our directory information notice. This hyperlink is live. Nicole, do you guys have the hyperlink to drop in the chat? If you'd like to take a look at that video that Katie put together last April 17th, talking about myth-busting directory information. So that dives into, you know, what if it's directory information, or does that mean that we can just share it with everybody? No. And it talks a little bit about that. For those of you that are 11th and 12th grade, goodbye 12th graders. I'm sure that we're getting rid or we're passing them off and seeing them off into the future over the course of the last couple of days and weeks. But, you know, as part of that, military and institutions of higher education, those of you that do have 11th and 12th graders, there is a piece in the notice that speaks about sharing with the military and institutions of higher education. If you have any questions about that, 11th and 12th grade LEAs, let us know. But as you can see here, and this is of, you know, the percentage is not of the whole, it's of those LEAs that would qualify for this, and it's still very high. Student data collection notice, which is the third of these four major documents. As you can see here, we're at that 99.35% threshold. I mean, it's really to the point to where, and data governance plan, as you can see here, the percentage of, and let's take a look at the rate, percentage of LEAs with a description of IT security data protection policies on the website. So it looks like we're wanting to expand on that. Is that what we're wanting, Nicole? Is that what that graph is telling us? The 31% to the 72?
I was hoping here that people would read my mind. And so if they haven't done that, I just don't understand why that's not happening. But again, this is a comparison on the left of our data compared to the national survey that PTAC did. So nationally, not all states have a data governance policy requirement. But what PTAC did look at was a document that had some kind of a description of IT security and data protection policies on their website, which is kind of the closest thing we have to a data governance plan. So what you're seeing here is that 98-ish% of our LEAs have that kind of a document, compared to nationally only about 31% have that document. And if you go forward one, you'll see that PTAC's requirements for this document were much more limited. They pretty much just wanted some kind of a document that said, we do security. And we're pretty stringent in our compliance review that you have to have certain elements in that data governance plan. So again, this is just kind of a celebration to that.
And talk about celebration. Like, if that wasn't the best segue word that we could use, this is over 720-ish day period, I would say, if the clock started at the 5.5% here, like, for real, like, I've been in this section for 5 years, and this is remarkable. Like, I don't know if you guys really understand, and I will tell you this: you are used as examples quite often as one of the only sectors in government that has it together regarding compliance, and even when we're talking about record management and whatnot, and as far as the things that we're doing as a state, like, this is just absolutely huge for us as far as getting to compliance. I'm going to end the poll right now just so that we can kind of take a look at how some of you feel about this metadata dictionary. And is the poll publishing out to everybody? I mean, I guess not necessarily the answers. Maybe it's looking like that to me, but it looks like, for the most part, the lowest that we have in confidence regarding your privacy health is like a 4 or a 5. That's only about 5 participants here today. That's fantastic. About 5 participants feel 4 or 5, and everybody else feels 6 or above. That is huge. How do you feel about your metadata dictionary? Everybody in this chat is, well, minus 2 of you who are 3s and 2s. Reach out to us. We would love to help you. But 4 10s, 5 9s, 7 8s, like, wow. The confidence that you feel, what that says to us and our team is that if you do have a concerned member of your community or somebody that's just curious about your data privacy practices, that you feel confident enough to have those conversations. And that is amazing to us. Do you feel like the compliance check gets at the heart? 23, yes, no. A lot of folks would really like to practice some data security things, really take a look at your privacy practices when it does come to data security. But it looks like we're kind of all a little bit all over the place with that. And we can take a look at some of those other things later. And I guess I can share some of the results, hoping that a lot of it stays somewhat, oh, there we go. Because I'm not used to doing Zoom polls, but I figured it's better than giving you a QR code to go to 3 other sites. Anyway, overall compliance, folks, this is so like, we just love this. We love talking about you. We love talking about your fluency. We love talking about, and this 2.56%. Isn't there like some weird nuance with this? I think
Yeah, that was the year that we started reviewing the metadata dictionary. So that first year it was a lot more basic, and then the following year the requirements became a lot more stringent, and we introduced the metadata dictionary for the first time. And since it was brand new, there were a lot of LEAs who were still building their metadata dictionaries, and you can see it shot up the next year and even more the next year.
So we've always so it was kind of like a process of like phase 1 was like, let's get all the documents good. Phase 2, then once the documents are good, we're going to focus on metadata dictionary. And this graph, as you guys can see, really does mimic the growth of metadata dictionary. And I love saying that 5 times fast. I know all of you do too, and we all understand the spirit behind the metadata dictionary and the idea of that, like, you have a parent that wants to know how the data is being shared through that school official exception. And for those transparency purposes, to have that on your website for a parent to be able to go in and see what metrics are being shared and for what reasons. I mean, I think that there really is some good, the spirit of the law and of the compliance is fantastic. But we're looking at these things right here and we're at, like 85%. And yes, we can grow and we can get to 90 and we can continue to ask the same questions year after year. But then going back to maybe one of those poll questions that we asked was like, how are you feeling that like this, if there is like a culture of privacy, maybe that is growing at your LA? So we wanted to jump into like, what is the next phase? Like, where do we go from here? Like, we're A students right now. Like, how do we continue to stay motivated when, it just becomes, I mean, and we want it to not be a burden, but we also want to make sure that we're constantly kind of maturing our practices and using the lens of privacy by design. And so I'm going to kick it over to my teammates, and I believe they are ready to start letting you know maybe some things that we're cooking. Just let us cook, as the Gen Alphas say.
I have been hearing that phrase. I'm still trying to figure out how to use it. I'm not brave enough to try, but I'm going to get there. Okay, so thank you, John, so much for explaining about the results. And you guys, we really are just like so excited and thrilled to work with people who are so hardworking and willing to get that done. So we're going to talk first about the compliance survey for this year. Some of this might be a little bit of a repeat to you if you've been doing this for a while, but some of it might be new also. So just as a reminder, the fall survey really consists of 4 different parts. We've got the privacy contact info survey, the ISO contact info survey, the privacy compliance review survey, and the cybersecurity framework survey. So the first thing we want to look at is the 2 contact info surveys. These surveys are going to be available September 1st, and there's no specific due date. We just say that we want that returned as quickly as possible. The reason for that is because we need your right contact info in order to get the other surveys to you. So like when we say as soon as possible, we really do mean as soon as possible. And just a reminder too, that if you have a change in your position before then, you're welcome to update us anytime. You don't have to wait till the contact info survey. This is just kind of our overall moment to do that. And then we've got the compliance review and the cybersecurity framework survey. Those surveys will come out on October 1st and they'll be due November 15th. So you've got about a 6-week window where you can answer the survey. You can work on the elements for this anytime before then. That 6-week window is just for the purposes of filling out the survey. And we'll explain a little bit more about this as we go. But you're always welcome to reach out to us, especially during the summer. I know there's a lot that goes on during the summer, but if that's a good moment for you to get some of these things in order ahead of time, we're happy to help you with that during that time. So the privacy contact info survey and the privacy compliance review will both be completed by the data manager at your LEA. For the contact info survey, you might have a couple of people who are involved with privacy. You might have like a primary and a secondary data manager, an MDD manager. We'll collect contact info for those people as well. And then for the ISO contact info survey and the cybersecurity framework survey, that will go to the ISO. And again, if there's more than one ISO, like a primary and a secondary, the contact info will go to the primary and the secondary. But the actual cybersecurity framework survey will only go to your primary ISO. So we really want to make sure that contact info is accurate. All right, the cybersecurity framework survey consists of 2 parts. There are non-technical questions and there are technical questions. So the first section is going to be made up of non-technical questions. There's 3 questions that are pretty simple. They're not technical at all. And they could be answered without a technical background. So if you, for example, work with an outside entity to do your cybersecurity training, or if you're the designated ISO, but you're not the main person that runs cybersecurity at your school or whatever, these questions can be answered by you. They're mostly related to cybersecurity training and barriers to that training. The other half of the survey, well, it's not half because 3 and 12 is not half, but the other part of the survey is more technical questions. These are going to be 12 multiple choice questions, and they are much more technical in nature. So somebody who has some technical expertise and deals with cybersecurity on the technology side at your school or your district or charter will need to answer these questions. So there's 12 different questions, but they're going to ask questions about things like, how do you filter content at your school? How do you prevent phishing? How do you deal with data management, multi-factor authentication, things like that. None of these answers are going to be used punitively. So this is a little bit different from the compliance survey. This is not a pass-fail situation. The goal here is just to help us understand how to support you. So you're not going to like get a report back that said you failed cybersecurity. This is just us trying to understand how we can support you better. And you should also know that the answers will not be shared publicly. We might make like aggregated results from all the responses we get and share those for learning purposes, but your LEA specific answers will not be shared with anybody. If you have questions about cybersecurity in general, about the cybersecurity framework survey, how to prep for that, whatever, Jeremy is your guy. He is really knowledgeable about all of this stuff. So if there are things that you're concerned about with your cybersecurity, especially when it comes to, you know, answering these kinds of questions, please reach out to him and he can help you out. If you have questions about anything that I just said, feel free to put it in the chat. And Jeremy, I'm going to kind of assign you to answer whatever those questions are that pop up in the chat. If you feel like it's something we need to discuss, let me know and we can talk about it. Okay, so that's the cybersecurity framework survey. Here's the other one, the big one, is the privacy compliance review survey. So there's two pieces to the privacy compliance review survey. The first part is going to be the annual notices and privacy policies. The second part is going to be the metadata dictionary. So the first section, the annual notices and privacy policies, is a collection of 4 documents. So if you could put those up on the screen, John. Thank you. Perfect. So 4 documents. The first 3 are notices, and the fourth one is kind of a policy document. So we've got the annual notification of FERPA and the directory information notice. These are both documents that you are required to make available to parents. Most people do it during registration. It's also a really good idea to post those documents somewhere publicly on your website. We actually get quite a few questions from parents who are looking for information about their district's privacy policies. And I can't tell you how great it is when we can just send them a link and say, oh yeah, here's your district's annual notification of FERPA rights. It's right on the school's website. And it makes you guys look really good because there's a transparency element there. People feel like, okay, this is easy to find and it's right there on the website. When we check these documents, there's a couple things we're going to check for. Go back one, sorry, John. So with the annual notification of FERPA rights, there is this notice of forwarding rights that is built into the annual notification of FERPA rights. The notice of forwarding rights has to do with the notice that you're giving parents that if their student transfers to another LEA, you are going to forward their records to that LEA without asking for parental consent. This is not a legal requirement. You don't have to include this in your annual notification of FERPA, but please keep in mind that if you don't include it, you will need to get written consent from parents before you forward their students' documents onto another school. So we strongly, strongly encourage you to have that in there, just so that you're not every single time a student transfers trying to get parental consent. The second document is the directory information notice, and there's an additional element in here that's also not a legal requirement. That's the Military and Institutes of Higher Ed notice. This is only for schools that serve students in 11th and 12th grade. And it's just a part of the directory information notice that says, hey, just so you know, if a recruiter from the military or an institute of higher education, like a college or a university, if they contact us and ask for directory information notice, we are going to give that to them. So if parents want to opt out of that separately, that's good information for them to have. And then the third and fourth documents are those student data collection notices and the data governance plan. We want to make sure that links are live and up to date. And especially, this is probably the most critical thing. Please make sure that your contact information is updated. A lot of these documents, when we look back at them or when we forward them to parents, it'll say, please contact so-and-so, and then it will list their email address. And it turns out this person left the school like 3 years ago or something. So if you have kind of a generalized email address, like if you can put, please contact registrar@lea.gov or whatever it is you want to do, that's really helpful. If not, please make sure that you update that contact information. And then in the past, we have said if you passed in previous years, we're not going to ask you to submit it again. This year will be a little bit different because it's been several years since we last reviewed documents that you sent or that you might have passed many years ago. For most of you, all you'll need to do is make sure that your link is updated and live. We've run into some broken leaks, so we want to make sure that that's updated. So if you can please just make sure that your contact information is updated, your policies are updated, and then make sure that your link is live. That's really the long and short of what we need you to do with those. And then one more, John. Oh yeah, I kind of really already said this, but I'll just ram it home because I feel really strongly about it. These notices and privacy policies are so, so important. It's a really big deal when you're trying to communicate with your public that those documents are easy to find. So even if it's not a legal requirement for you to have it on your website, it's a really good show of transparency. And it is a legal requirement to have your student data collection notice and your data governance plan on your website. We're so close to getting 100% compliance on these. Like, I would love it so much if we had 100% compliance with the notices and policies. So go team, we can do it. Is there a forwarding notice template? Yes, excellent question. We're going to talk kind of at the end about some resources, but one of the resources that we have is a template for the forwarding notice. I wonder if Jeremy or John, if you could grab the link for that and stick it in there. It's in I have lost my words. It's on the privacy compliance part of the Canvas course, but probably not you, John, because you're driving. So if one of you guys could find that and stick it in, if not, we'll talk about it at the end. Okay, metadata dictionary. So this year for the metadata dictionary, we're not going to have multiple options that you can choose. Everybody will have the same requirements. So the requirements are as follows. First of all, we're going to check all the required products, which I'll explain shortly. Secondly, we will spot check 10 additional products. These products we're just going to kind of choose. So you probably are not going to know in advance what those products are. And I will just say, we've had some people ask about this. The law says that your metadata dictionary needs to be comprehensive, meaning that you list everything, every product with whom you're sharing data needs to be in that metadata dictionary. We don't have a tool that will let us figure out everything that your LEA uses and shares data with. So this is a little bit of an honor system situation. I will say, though, that it is a requirement of state law that you have all of those products in your dictionary. And this is a thing that doesn't become a problem until it becomes a problem, and then it can be a really big problem. If parents are looking for a product and they don't see it in that metadata dictionary, that can be a big concern, and it can even be a violation of state law. So if you have products missing, we need to get those products in there.
Hey, Nicole, has that ever happened before?
Has it ever happened before that products are not
That a
listed?
parent has complained about that? Is that just like a mythical thing that we've been saying for years?
No, not mythical, unfortunately. Parents are actually becoming more and more savvy when it comes to privacy law. So I don't want to make it like scary, like it's a gotcha situation. We know that there are a lot of products that are in use, and it can be really hard to figure out everything that your teachers are using. We do have some resources that we can use to help you with this. So if you're concerned about comprehensiveness, please contact us and we can help you with it. I'm mostly just saying this to mean that it's a requirement. It's something that parents are looking for. And so even though we don't have a way to check to make sure you have every single product listed, please do your best to make sure that you get that done. Okay, so here are the products that will be required for this year. So required for everybody will be that you have listed your student information system, your learning management system, your productivity suite. Most of you probably use either Google or Microsoft, and USB-E Utrex. I am aware of at least one school that does not use an LMS or productivity suite. If that's you, just remind me when it gets to that point, and we're not going to dock you for not listing a product that you don't have, but almost everybody should have those 4 products listed. And then the list underneath that is products that are required where applicable. So these are dependent upon your enrollment. We have DLM Kite, RISE, Utah Aspire Plus, ACT, Access WIDA, and Acadience. So some of these are based on what grade levels you serve. Some of them are based on whether you have multilingual learners enrolled or students with severe disabilities. So if you're not sure about any of these, please contact us and we can help you with that as well. And then just a reminder of what you're required to include for each product. You need to have a purpose, which is just a short description of what you use the product for, and why you're sharing data with them, basically. The other 2 are a justification and a FERPA exception. The justification is just who is it that's asking you to use this product? Is it a federal requirement? Is it a state requirement? Or did you as a school decide that you wanted to use this even though nobody was requiring you to do so? And that third one is the FERPA exception. So you're just going to state under which FERPA exception are you sharing this data. For most of you, in most products, that's going to be a school official exception. There are other ones that might be used. The audit evaluation is probably the next most likely. And I'll just say that if you're not, if you're feeling like you're not really confident when it comes to FERPA exceptions, we have a great training that we can do with you that's kind of a one-on-one training. That you could sign up for, and we can help you with that. And we also have some resources for the most commonly used products where we list the exception that goes with that. Is justification for product type or for a specific product? I'm not exactly sure what you might mean by product type, but usually the justification is going to be for a specific product. So for example, like the RISE is a specific product and it's a state requirement. If you're using like Kahoot, that's going to be a local decision. There aren't very many that have a federal requirement. And I'll also say that there are some where it might be both a state requirement and a local decision. So for example, you have to use an SIS, that's a state requirement, but the state doesn't tell you which SIS you need to use. So if you're using Aspire, for example, that would be both a state requirement and a local decision. And I'll also just add that if you have specific questions about specific products, we can kind of work individually with you guys on that. But generally speaking, it's going to be the specific product. And then here are some resources specific to the metadata dictionary. This first one is a pretty comprehensive document, so don't get scared when you open it. That one is going to be really helpful for any of you who are kind of starting from scratch. Like maybe you used to have your MDD on Data Gateway and now you need to move it to another location. Or maybe you have been using a Google spreadsheet and you want to go to SDPC or something similar to that. This document is going to help you with that. And then down at the bottom here, we also have these appendices. This is what I mentioned before, where we have commonly used products and then their purpose, justification, and exception. We don't have every single product out there because there are a gazillion, but we do have quite a lot of them. And then John, if you could scroll up a little bit to the orange and green ones. Or maybe they're just orange and green in my mind. Oh yeah, green, I was right. So we also have a couple of appendices here that list the kinds of products that you might consider adding to your dictionary, depending on whether you use them or not. So if you're looking to make your MDD more comprehensive, you might look through here and decide like, okay, which of these products do we use? Do we need to include this in our MDD? So those are both super useful. That second link down there is a link to just the appendices if you're looking for those specifically. We have some tips for inventorying on here. Jeremy, do you want to take this one? Or do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, I can talk about this for sure. So at the LEA that I worked at before, we had Learn Platform, which made it really easy to keep track of inventory. And honestly, I don't know how I would have done it without it. But there's a Chrome extension that you can install, like you can push out to all of your devices that will show everything that people are using, which is super useful. And then with that, you can set up workflows so that teachers can request applications that they might want to use. So for me, that was super critical. But if you're not using Learn Platform, if you're just using the SDPC website or Google Sheets or something, there are other ways. For example, Google can help you keep track of these things if you're using Google Workspace or your content filter. There are just some options there. I would suggest too that this might be a good spot for everyone to interact with the privacy listserv so that we can give, the tips and tricks that y'all have. I think that would be super useful, which is, yeah, I hope we have a link to that here. But so yeah, if you are participating in the DTL grant program, you can gain access to Learn Platform if you'd like to use it. And I reached out to Melanie earlier because right now there's also an open RFP for an EdTech management software solution. It's going to be a multi-award contract, so there's the potential that Learn Platform will still be on there, but that RFP is still in progress, so still not sure about that. And then Caleb asked about the Chrome extension. If you're using Learn Platform, I would, you can reach out to me or you can reach out to Madra Cherubini. She's great. But that Chrome extension, if you're using like Google Workspace, you can just force it onto, everyone's managed Chrome browser, and then it just keeps track of the apps that they're using, which, yeah, again, I don't know how I would have like been able to wrangle that even in a small LEA. So I don't know how like larger LEAs manage it. But yeah. Oh, and the bottom bullet here, consider sending a form out to your staff to find out what products they're using. That's a good way. And also, I just wanted to reinforce here that directory information is not an excuse for unapproved app usage. I've heard that before from some other people, like, oh, they just log in with Google, so it's basically just first and last name, so it's directory information. But that's not the case. We still need to be approving these applications, getting DPAs or signing Exhibit Es, because even a first and last name is still sensitive, personally identifiable information. So, yeah. I think that's all I have for that. But yeah, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I will happily answer them.
Thanks, Jeremy. I included on here a few example MDDs. It was really hard to narrow down because there are so many good MDDs floating around out there. I think this would be especially useful if you're transferring your MDD from one service to another, or if you're kind of doing it from scratch or something like that. So these are a couple of examples that you can look at, but honestly, like everybody's MDDs are looking better and better all the time. And then before you go on to the next page, John, can I just kind of want to take a little beat and first of all, make sure that there are no questions about the metadata dictionary. So if you do have a question about the MDD, feel free to come off mute or put it in the chat. And then can I also just ask in the chat, just give me a level of confidence you have with the MDD, with 1 being like, I have no idea what I'm doing and I'm completely lost. And 5 being like, I could teach a course on this. I am a super duper expert. So just kind of give me a 1 to 5 in the chat so that I can see how everybody's feeling. Oh, yay. Sharon, I love your 3.25. That's so specific. Good. Looks like everybody's feeling pretty good about this. 3.15, also very specific. Fantastic. Okay. And I'm glad to hear that so many of you are feeling comfortable with it. John's making math jokes now. But please do reach out if you're not feeling so comfortable with it. Like, we are here to help. We have a lot of resources that we can share with you. So please do reach out. And if you're one of those people who's like a 3 or a 4, that's fantastic. I'm super glad to hear it. And please just kind of use the summer, I guess, to get things ready to go. John is kind of walking through our privacy compliance review section of the data manager course. So hopefully this is something that you guys are familiar with. And if not, we do have this linked in the resources section at the very end. So there's a lot of really good information in here as well. Okay, awesome. I didn't see any questions come in, so I'm going to assume that we're good with that. Okay, so up to this point, everything has been pretty much the same as what we've done in the past. We are going to have one additional section at the end here. And this is going to be a section that's optional, but strongly recommended. This is a self-assessment that's going to cover 5 areas. Those 5 areas are leadership practices, business practices, data security practices, professional development practices, and classroom practices. You can see kind of a little snapshot of what some of the questions might look like on the left here. We sent out a request for feedback on this a couple of weeks ago. This is information that will help support us firstly in doing some training and stuff like that for the coming year. And it's also something that we are considering involving in our proposal for a privacy compliance revamp, which we'll talk about in just a second. One of the concerns that we heard from people with this is that completing this self-assessment might ask for information that people are not familiar with, or it might take more time than they were expecting to use during this part of the privacy compliance survey. I'll include this information in the survey itself, but I just want to say that for the purposes of this year, the self-assessment should be something that you can just kind of fill out rather quickly with a sense of we're not doing this at all, which would be a number 1, or we are experts at this, which would be a number 4, or somewhere in the middle. So this would be something that would be really, really helpful information for us, and it would help support a proposal that we're working on. But if this is something that you're concerned about, or you feel like you don't have time for, it will be optional. And then John, could you go on to the next one? So here's a little bit of information about how these revamps are going. So as I mentioned before, I sent out a request for feedback. So some of you might already be familiar with this or might know what we're kind of doing with this. But our team is working on a proposal for a new compliance check that would focus on one of 5 standards each year. And this would be starting not this school year, but next school year. And I want to really emphasize this is a proposal. This is not something that we're 100% sure that we're going to move forward on, and it would be something that we would need board approval for. So this is something we're still working on and defining and looking at proposing to the board to see how they would feel about it. The new review, if the proposal were to go forward, would involve completing a self-assessment and then setting a goal for one of those 5 focus standards each year. So it would be a pretty considerable departure from how we've been doing things. We haven't nailed down all the specifics yet. So there's not a ton of information I can give you beyond that at this point, but I will say that if you're interested in providing feedback or suggestions or being otherwise involved in the process of preparing this new proposal, please email me. We would love to have kind of a list of people who are interested in giving us some ideas about this and responding to requests for feedback. Because you guys are the ones in the trenches. We want to make sure that we're supporting you and make sure that the way that we're assessing compliance is going to be ultimately helpful to you and not an additional burden. So that will be kind of the revamp for the privacy compliance check. And then I'll ask Jeremy to talk briefly about how things are going with the cybersecurity framework survey.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to briefly talk about the survey in general, because board rule requires that LEAs have an ISO and take steps to protect student data with good security and to implement a cybersecurity framework like the CIS controls. So the survey has existed just to get a sense of where LEAs are at with that, but the response rate is usually low, and I'm not sure that it paints a great picture of the reality. So in the short term, I'll be modifying some of the questions on the survey that are out of date or not current practices. But I'll also be reaching out to ISOs over the summer to talk to them about how we can revise the survey, but also just generally improve our security posture collaboratively across the state. I want to be able to help with that. I came from IT and I understand the pain points that I had in trying to, implement good security, but I want to understand the things that others deal with in bigger LEAs or in smaller LEAs. And I want to know how our team can help with that. So it will be more of a priority going forward, and I'd love any feedback. And yeah, like I said, if you are an ISO, you will probably hear from me at some point. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. If you have questions about the potential revamps that we're talking about, feel free to toss them in the chat and I'll try to answer as much as I can, given the understanding that this is a work in progress and we don't have all our ducks in a row just yet. Here are some overall resources that we hope will be helpful to you. We, like many of you, work through the summer, and we would love to work one-on-one. I personally think that this is a super useful way to get your documents and your metadata dictionary together, because we can walk you through some of the things that we need to add on or whatever. We can also support you with individualized questions. Like, for example, if you are trying to build your metadata dictionary and you want to make sure that you have DPAs in place for all of your products or something like that, we could help you with individual products and all that kind of stuff. So you can see on this list here, John, can you go back to the, yeah. So you can see on that list there, each of our names, each of those has a link for a sign up to do a one-on-one meeting with one of us. John and I handle pretty much the same stuff. So SDPC, DPAs, anything to do with the privacy compliance survey. So you could make an appointment with either one of us for that. If your questions are specific to cybersecurity stuff, Jeremy's probably the one that you want to turn to for that. And then before I go on, I'm seeing a question from John. Oh, I love it. Katie already answered it. In case you didn't see it, John's question was, is the revamp taking into consideration increasing privacy requirements, future-proofing in light of likely increasing privacy legislation? And Katie says yes. And I think that's true too. It's a little hard to predict exactly what the future might look like. But we are seeing that parents especially and legislators are more and more interested in privacy requirements and concerns. So I think that we are doing the best that we can to try to anticipate some of those things and expand those requirements. And John, we did send out a request for feedback on the self-assessment. So if you're interested in kind of the different areas that we'll be looking at, I'd be happy to share that with you and you can take a look. We do also have a couple of documents that are really great resources. So we have the resource document for this slideshow, which basically is just a list of all the stuff that we've talked about, and also some information for appointed records officers, which we did not talk about because we don't have a compliance piece for AROs, but there is some useful information in there that's kind of peripheral to some of these compliance things and might be helpful for you during your process. And then John, could you go back to the slideshow? Thanks. These other items here, I would encourage you to explore. I think they might be useful to you. We have our Canvas course, which outlines really specific details about the compliance review. And this is especially helpful as you're working on your policy documents. So if you're looking for information about like what needs to be included in the annual notice of FERPA rights, or John, could you click on the one that says notice of forwarding records to other schools? I think this is the question that was asked earlier, and then go up and click on instructions. So this will tell you exactly what language to include, where to include it, all that kind of stuff. And there's a page like that for each of the notices and privacy policy documents, and also a section like that for the metadata dictionary. So if you're wanting to make sure that your documents look good, and or if you're adding things you maybe haven't been in compliance before, you want to make sure you are this year, that would be the place to go. And then can you go back to the slideshow again, John? Thanks so much. These other items in here are, again, just kind of periphery things that might be useful to you. So the USPA homepage is going to be information about getting DPAs in place. The metadata dictionary instruction document we already talked about a little bit earlier. It's a super useful tool. So if you have any questions about that, you can take a look in there. And then we also included a link for the directory information myth busting presentation that Katie did during the spring training, which was amazing, and has a video of old-timey people doing FERPA. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you're missing out and you should check it out. And I think there was one more. Oh yeah, this is an inventory form. If you don't use Learn Platform, you're not really sure where to go in beginning the process of inventory, make a copy of this document and you can use it to send it out as a Google form to your staff to find out what products they're using. This is an exercise that people have done before that has been a little bit eye-opening, I think. Sometimes they get answers back that people are using products that they were not aware of. So that's a really useful tool for inventorying. Another thing that's really helpful with inventorying is just making sure that your staff has strong training so that they know that they can't just use random things without having them go through the approval process. So I think those resources will be super helpful. We planned for this webinar to go until 3:30, and I either talked really fast or vastly overestimated how long it was going to take us to get through this information. I hope that none of you are crying that we're ending a little early. We'll stick around for a few minutes. If you have individual questions you want to chat with us about, we'd be happy to do that. And as always, you can contact us, set up an appointment, or send us an email or whatever, and we are here for you. But in short, we wish you the best of luck over the summer. I hope that you get a few days to rest and recover a little bit from the school year. And then when you're ready to jump into the next round of privacy growth for your school, please let us know how we can help. We just appreciate all of you so much. Just thrilled that I can work with all of you. So thank you so much. I will go ahead and answer Sharon's question. You are free to go if you are, if you feel that you have gotten what you needed, and please stick around if you have other questions. Sharon.
Should I stop the recording?
Oh yeah, go ahead and stop the recording. Great idea.
Yep. So I'm going to stop the recording and we'll continue. But remember, if you want me to come and visit you, I'll come and visit you.